session.
The mission of SUSE is to give customers the freedom to innovate everywhere. We are a global leader in true open source solutions, and our community-led power of many approach to innovation ensures that we give you the freedom and flexibility needed to meet your digital transformation goals. We help our customers around the world simplify, modernize, and accelerate their business with solutions for hybrid cloud IT, cloud-native transformation, and IT operations at the edge. Are you ready for SUSE to help? No matter how complex your infrastructure or how quickly you are transitioning to the cloud, SUSE has the solutions to power your hybrid cloud IT strategy. SUSE offers one platform for managing all your business-critical applications, like SAP, without downtime, whether running on-premises or in the cloud. SUSE solutions for high-performance computing take the complexity out of running demanding applications like AI, ML, and analytics, so you can focus on gaining new business insights. SUSE management solutions enable you to seamlessly and securely migrate your enterprise workloads across operating systems and hybrid cloud infrastructure. SUSE is here to enable your cloud-native transformation by harnessing the power of containers and Kubernetes to innovate faster and keep up with the changing demands of your business. Our SUSE Rancher Enterprise Kubernetes Management Platform is the only solution that offers simple, consistent, and secure operation of any certified Kubernetes distribution from the data center to the cloud to the edge and beyond. By harnessing the power of containers, you can create new customer experiences by accelerating the deployment of new cloud-native applications. Modernize your legacy monolithic applications and infrastructure with agile cloud services and migrate existing applications into containers to more effectively leverage your cloud-native infrastructure. As edge computing continues to emerge as a key pillar of your customer-centric digital transformation strategy, SUSE makes IT operations at the edge possible. SUSE provides mission-critical edge computing solutions that are simple to use and reliable, with the highest level of security, safety, and compliance. With SUSE, you are able to build, deploy, and manage cloud-native applications at massive scale using our adaptable Linux OS and Kubernetes solutions that are purpose-built for the edge. SUSE Edge solutions are helping expand the boundaries of innovation into areas including medical devices, 5G equipment, automobiles, aircraft, factories, cruise ships, retail stores, and even satellites. At SUSE, we want you to be innovation heroes for your customers. Your journey of innovation.
We are going to be live.
Once again, welcome to all the delegates and speakers to the Session 2 Technical Business presentation by the various people. On this session will be chaired by none other than our good friend and the industry expert, Saurabh Jain, who is the Vice President with PETIA. We have distinguished speakers, Rahul Krishna from SUSE, Mohit Rampal, who is a cybersecurity expert and a consultant to Amojni Technologies, Colonel Inderjit Singh, an old friend Chief Secretary Officer of BHARAT Technology, and Mithali is a good friend of all the entire BE family. Mithali, so I welcome all the speakers, and without taking much of your time, Saurabh, over to you.
So good afternoon, everyone. Today we have a very interesting panel who will be sharing their thoughts to us. So this is the panel on open source trends and managing it effectively to improve ROI and reduce risks. So I would like to introduce Mr. Rahul Krishna Gupta. He will be speaking first. So he is the Senior Solutions Architect at Suez GSI Alliance. So he will be speaking on Innovate Everywhere, Become Innovation Heroes, and with Suez and the Power of Many. So Rahul is an open source technology evangelist working with Suez. He has been working with Linux and open source technologies for more than 19 years and has been with Suez for more than 15 years. In his current role as Senior Solutions Architect with the Suez Global Systems Integrator Alliance team, Rahul works with the global SI partners to develop unique joint solutions involving emerging open source technologies like OpenStack, Kubernetes, Ceph, and Cloud Foundry. So I think we can now give the mic to Rahul. So welcome, Rahul. I will just like to name the other speakers so that the audience knows about them. So next we would have Mohit Rampal from Remogni Technologies speaking. Then we will have Colonel Inderjeet Singh. So Colonel Inderjeet Singh has been a speaker in some of the earlier sessions also. Last year also we had him as a speaker in the panel. And then Mithali Sharma would be speaking. So over to Rahul.
Yeah, thank you, Saurabh. Thanks for the nice introduction, and good afternoon to everybody. Saurabh already introduced. I'll just quickly add one thing I would like to highlight is how do we pronounce our company name, and it's SUSE. So
sorry.
That's not the first time. It happens all the time, and people come up with various pronunciations. So I thought, let me take this opportunity to just highlight how do we say it. So it's SUSE. It's a German company and has been around for 28 years. I would just like to start my session with a very interesting piece of information. As you can see on the screen, you can see an astronaut walking on what appears like the Martian landscape. And if you have seen the movie The Martian, you remember Mark Watney, played by the actor Matt Damon, as the hero who landed on Mars, survived there for alone for 549 sols, which is equivalent to 564 Earth days, and then was successfully rescued back to Earth, right? And we treat him as a hero of that movie. But just think of it, none of it would have been possible without a large team that worked in the background to make it all successful. At SUSE, we strive to make you the innovation hero. We bring in the power of many, the open source community, to build products and solutions that enable you to innovate everywhere. And that's essentially the theme of my session today. Right. So digital transformation is real and it's happening. Almost every business is transforming into a digital business controlled by software. And COVID-19 has only accelerated this transformation. This event being held virtually itself is a prime example of it. We have adapted to the needs of the time. Customers want to know, want to enhance their end user customer experience. They want to drive agility to meet the customer demands in time, and they want to have intelligent insights into their business so that they can take the right decisions. This is driving the need for digital transformation. Digital transformation is built on innovation, but it's also a fact that more often the innovation is happening in isolation, most often on the cloud and on the edge. But you also have a core infrastructure running out of data center, which kind of tends to get left out. This is not an ideal situation since you're not able to realize the full value of innovation-driven digital transformation. Customers are looking to innovate everywhere, from data center to cloud to edge. They want to simplify and optimize their existing IT environments to derive the maximum benefits and drive cost reductions. They want to modernize their applications and infrastructure by leveraging modern cloud computing platforms and application development concepts. Once they have simplified and modernized their IT environments, they can then accelerate business innovation to drive enhanced customer experience and improve their business prospects. And SUSE is here to help. SUSE's mission is to give customers the freedom to innovate everywhere. SUSE is a global leader in true open source solutions, and our community-led power of many approach to innovation gives our customers the freedom and flexibility needed to meet their digital transformation goals. We help our customers simplify, modernize, and accelerate their business with solutions for hybrid cloud IT, cloud native transformation, and another very interesting area, which is IT operations at the edge. With hybrid cloud IT solutions, customers can have a consistent experience and can run their business critical workloads reliably, securely, both on-prem and in the cloud. The SUSE cloud native transformation solution offer a simple and scalable deployment and management of containerized workloads across multiple platforms, both on-prem and in the cloud. SUSE solutions supporting IT operations on the edge offer full stack infrastructure and application management for edge computing. These include IT, commercial, as well as harsh industrial environments. So let's look at the hybrid cloud IT solutions. SUSE has the solution to power your hybrid cloud IT infrastructure, no matter how complex it is or how complex you want to, how quickly you want to transition to cloud. SUSE provides a single platform to run all your business critical applications like SAP with near zero downtime, whether running on-prem or on any of the public cloud platforms. 80% of all Fortune 500 companies and 90% of SAP HANA systems run on SUSE. SUSE Solutions for High Performance Computing provides you a simplified platform for running demanding applications like AI/ML and analytics. SUSE also provides a unique management solution capable of managing multiple Linux distributions across hybrid environments, all from a single console, thereby making your life easier. Because the reality is that there do exist multiple Linux distributions in environments, in customers' data centers or public clouds. The same solution also gives you automation and monitoring capabilities, again, as part of the same solution. With SUSE Solutions for Hybrid Cloud IT, customers can significantly reduce their total cost of ownership. At the same time, realize faster time to value, thereby driving significant cost reduction. SUSE also enables your cloud native transformation by harnessing the power of containers and Kubernetes to help you create new customer experiences, modernize your legacy applications by migrating them to containers, create new cloud native applications to accelerate innovation. Our SUSE Rancher Kubernetes Enterprise Management Platform is the only solution that offers a simple, consistent, and secure operation of any certified Kubernetes distribution from the data center to the cloud to the edge and beyond. It offers a true multi-cloud, multi-cluster Kubernetes management with no vendor lock-in and powers your start anywhere, go anywhere cloud native adoption strategy. As edge computing emerges as a key component of your customer-focused digital transformation strategy, SUSE helps bring IT operations to the edge to a reality. SUSE provides a complete stack for mission-critical edge computing that is easy to use and reliable and provides the highest level of security, safety, and compliance. With SUSE Solutions for the edge, you're able to build and manage cloud-native applications at a massive scale by leveraging our adaptable Linux OS and Kubernetes solutions purpose-built for the edge. SUSE Edge solutions are helping customers expand the boundaries of innovation across areas as diverse as medical devices, 5G equipment, automobiles, aircraft, factories, cruise ships, retail stores, and even an advanced area as satellites. At SUSE, we want you to be the innovation heroes for your organizations and your customers. So let's look at some of the innovation heroes who have benefited from SUSE solutions for hybrid cloud IT, cloud native transformation, and IT solutions at the edge. So SUSE solutions are trusted by customers globally across industries, and on this slide you can see some very renowned names in their respective verticals. I'm not going to go through all the names, but I will definitely be talking about a few of them who have implemented some very unique solutions. The first one, and a very interesting area that I wanted to talk about, is in the automobile space. SUSE has formed a strategic partnership with Electrobit. Electrobit is an award-winning and visionary global automotive supplier of operating system agnostic, embedded and connected software products. The automotive experience of Electrobit combined with the IT infrastructure experience of SUSE will enable this partnership to deliver a next generation Linux-based operating system for the future intelligent vehicles. This platform will ensure safety, deliver convenience, maximize vehicle efficiency, and establish trust with customers. It will be a first for Electrobit, for SUSE, as well as for the automobile industry. Another one is ZAMG. ZAMG is a research institute of the Austrian Federal Ministry of Education, Science and Research. It is headquartered in Vienna, Austria. It provides crucial services ranging from weather forecast to climate modeling and earthquake monitoring. The organization works with partners like the European Space Agency to gain a better understanding of the effects of climate change and contributes to open data initiatives. To generate ever more accurate and detailed weather forecasts, ZAMG is constantly looking to increase the data resolution of its models. ZAMG receives 22 million data points per day. Integrating satellite data into its forecasting models is the next step to make them even more accurate. ZAMG plans to install 10,000 environmental sensors across Vienna. The big data analytics and artificial intelligence will be used to gain deeper insights into the interactions between weather and traffic based on this Internet of Things deployment. And SUSE is present in all these projects. Building on over 20 years experience of working with SUSE, ZAMG selected SUSE Linux Enterprise Server for high performance computing as the operating system for its powerful 7,000 core HPE SGI supercomputer. ZAMG also uses SUSE Linux Enterprise Server to power their highly scalable parallel file system Lustre. Big data analytics and machine learning workloads with Apache Hadoop and Apache Spark also run reliably and fast on SUSE Linux Enterprise. Another interesting play is with Airbus, and I'm sure all of you would have heard of this name. Many of you would have traveled in their aircrafts as well. Airbus works with SUSE Rancher to transform their legacy infrastructure and create an agile cloud-native architecture. They have leveraged the Rancher Kubernetes management platform and have been able to achieve significant efficiencies and benefits in their environment. They have reduced their upgrade times by up to 80%. They have reduced their management times and efforts by up to 75%. And they have been able to build an infrastructure whereby new instances can be created in minutes. So they have set up a methodology that is future-proof, and they are all set, all primed to promote growth within their organization. And the last one that I want to talk about is Absa. Absa is a banking customer based in South Africa. They were embarking on their cloud-native application journey, and they actually had been using our competition in the past, but they were facing a lot of challenges. So we worked with them to address all their concerns, resolve all their problems, and ultimately Absa chose SUSE Rancher platform for their cloud-native application deployments. They were able to achieve major efficiencies, 75% reduction in overhead costs with Rancher as compared to the competition. Management time reduction by up to 80%, and their outages were reduced by 80%, which is very, very critical because any outage is essentially going to impact customer experience, and they were able to significantly improve those customer experiences by leveraging the SUSE Rancher platform. So 4 different innovation heroes who have leveraged SUSE Rancher products across diverse fields and have gained significant benefits from it. Lastly, I'll just touch upon SUSE a bit for those who may not be aware. SUSE was founded in 1992, so we have been in the open source business for 28 years. SUSE is the world's first provider of an enterprise Linux distribution. SUSE has a rich history as an open source pioneer. We have brought many firsts to the enterprise open source market over the last 28 years. And today, thousands of businesses worldwide rely on SUSE for their mission critical computing and IT management needs. In 2020, SUSE acquired Rancher, the most widely adopted enterprise Kubernetes management platform. And SUSE and Rancher are now one company, so we span across the enterprise Linux distribution space as well as the cloud-native application development powered by containers and Kubernetes platforms. And lastly, as I mentioned in the beginning, I want to highlight the power of many. SUSE brings the power of many by working with and contributing to the open source community. We are part of all the open source projects that you see on the screen. And essentially what we do is leverage them and contribute to them and build enterprise products based around these open source projects. And I would just like to end my session by inviting all of you to have a look at the Rancher projects. These are all open source, all on GitHub. The idea is for our innovation to begin life as an open source project. And as it begins to resonate with our community and customers, we include it in our product portfolio or build it into Rancher itself. A few of the products that I would just like to highlight are projects. Rancher is our flagship project in this space. It's the world's most popular Kubernetes management platform with close to 40,000 deployments. RKE is a CNCF certified Kubernetes distribution that runs entirely within containers. The current version runs on Docker. The next version is going to be running on Containerd. And then K3S, which is very interesting. Again, it's a CNCF certified distribution, but very lightweight, very easy to install. And the entire Kubernetes distribution comprises of a single binary less than 100 MB. And as you can see, this is the type of Kubernetes distribution that you would want to put on your edge or IoT devices, and it's rightly suitable for them. In addition, another project that is very interesting is Fleet, because using that you can deploy and manage up to thousands of clusters at the network edge. So all of this ties together very well. Everything's available on GitHub. Go out there, try it out. In fact, many of the 40,000 customers that I mentioned use it to run their applications. If you need enterprise support on this, I mean, once you start using it and you realize that you need enterprise support, that's when you can reach out to SUSE. Otherwise, these are all open source. Yeah, and one thing that I missed is Longhorn, another very interesting project that we created and which has found a lot of traction amongst the open source community as well as customers. It's a highly available persistent block storage solution for microservice-based stateful applications, and it is built for Kubernetes. So it runs as a component on the Kubernetes clusters. So I hope all of this would be interesting for you, and you will go out and try it out. And with that, I would end my session. Thank you. If there are any questions, please feel free to post, and I'll be happy to answer them. Yeah, over to you.
Hi everyone again. So I would like to thank Rahul. So I learned a lot from him, and I was personally not knowing how much SUSE is in the industry. I always thought it is just a Linux company, but you have a lot of offerings and you are working with a lot of key people in the industry like Airbus, etc. That was great. So over to Mohit Rampal. So I would like to introduce Mohit. So Mohit is a cybersecurity evangelist and consultant. He's from Remediation Technologies. He's having 30 plus years of rich cross-functional technology experience with global organizations focused in cybersecurity, telecom, IT solutions, complemented by an MS Systems and Information from BITS Pilani and MSc Physics from Delhi University, along with CI SSP. Presently an entrepreneur and established Remediation Technologies, an organization focused on next generation security solutions. Prior to this, he was the country manager for Black Duck Software, now Synopsys. He has been associated with companies like Codenomicon Software, which is a Finnish cybersecurity firm, as regional manager, India and South Asia, and dealing with next generation security solutions for telecom, defense, IT, government, etc. So over to Mohit. Mohit, you have
unmute yourself. Sir, unmute yourself.
Am I?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Let me start sharing a screen. So good afternoon, everybody, and I'll keep the time in interest. So just a quick update on what we're going to be quickly running through. So we are me as a background. I've been into cyber for more than 3 decades, like already shared, and for the last I would say maybe around a decade, I've been associated with the open source consumption and distribution across at least in Southeast Asia and India. And I worked across with the multiple companies who have been focused on open source, and presently in Remediation also we are working, we are partnered with a company which helps in organizations to consume open source legally, efficiently, and securely. In the previous session, in the inaugural session, Manish had mentioned, security as one of the issues, right? So I'll quickly keep on track. Some of the threats and trends which are emerging in the last, post-COVID, during COVID times is typically transitioning to the digital economy. That's actually happening, and because of transiting to the digital economy is happening at a very fast pace. Like SUSE mentioned right now, consumption of open source has increased exorbitantly. So every time we are talking to a financial organization or somebody getting into a payment gateway or into a new solution, the first thing we ask them is, how much of open source are you consuming? And we realize that the trend is like it's an 80-20 theory, right? So 80% of whatever development they're doing is typically based on open source, and 20% is the custom components they're building on top of it, right? So that's increasing effectively, right? The other thing which is moving very effectively is the DevSecOps environment, which was earlier mentioned, I think, by Mrs. Anita Verma also, and the inaugural session is DevOps and DevSecOps is moving, and so is the adoption of AI. Now, all this is also resulting in the increasing cyber breaches and cyber attacks. So if you look at 2020, 2019 onwards, the quantity or the quantum of cyber breaches or cyber attacks has increased drastically. It's not something which has gone down. And open source started coming into place way back in 2012 when we had the first open source big breach called the Heartbleed. You know, I was associated with a company called Codenomicon at that period of time, and we were working on it for quite some time before it was also reported by Codenomicon along with Google that Heartbleed, which is on SSL, was a vulnerability which was affecting a large number of organizations. That's where when open source started taking the front stand in terms of being watched and equally demonstratable. Then the other thing which is moving very quickly is API security. So people are working on APIs and typically on app security. So what's worrying them is, I have an app. I would like to ensure that what is the open source I'm consuming. So they are now looking at a detailed discussion point wherein they want to figure out what is the open source consumed, how safe is it, how legally valid it is, and how old is the component, right? And then, of course, we're talking about network and security in isolation and security solutions. As a company...
So kindly make your presentation in the presentation mode. We are not able to see.
1 minute. It's on the presentation mode only. Let me start again. Is it visible now? Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So as an organization, we are focused on four pillars. Where one is application security, the other is data security, the third is infrastructure, and the last is threat intelligence. So we've been working very closely across on all these four segments, and we are working with large organizations. We're working with enterprises as well as government departments, right, across on all these technologies. Typically, Scantist is the open source solution. We would be spending a little time today, whatever time we have. Now, if you look at open source, I've been associated with open source, when I was still in Codenomicon, and that time we were working with we had just started the open source in Codenomicon. By the time we started things on open source and application security, Codenomicon got acquired by Synopsys, and then I moved into a company called Black Duck. Black Duck was once upon a leader in the open source consumption. Now, if you look at the quantum of open source being consumed by organizations, like my previous speaker mentioned, like in SUSE, you can go back to Git and see. So what you see in Git is the number of I would say applications or components which are getting exposed on Git has been increasing drastically, right? So this is where we're talking about open source releasing happening per day, right? So it's very, very important for organizations when they start writing an application to look at the open source. They need to still refer back to Git. They may need to revert back to Maven Central, etc. There are a couple of repos which you need to revert back to. If you look at the number of open source libraries, we're expecting 300 million plus by 2026. If you look at all the mobile applications and you look at all the new next generation applications, including IoT, including smart cities, the quick deployment and delivery is happening because of organizations using 80-20 theory literally, wherein they're looking at 80% of the components which are open source components which are being consumed, right? So that's important to understand that open source, yes, is helpful. If you are able to manage that dragon effectively, then you've got a good product. If you do not, it could also lead to bankruptcy, because you could be using a component which is, legally or license-wise is not allowed to be sold commercially, right? If you're using such a component, you could be in serious legal or licensing issues, right? So what are the open source risks we are talking about right now? So like I shared in 2012 in Codenomicon, we had data breaches happening, and OpenSSL or the Heartbleed actually was an eye-opener for a lot of organizations at that period of time. Then we had a number of breaches which were happening, which were due to the open source consumption of components, right, which were being called for. I still remember whenever we used to ask an organization, or whenever we asked any bank or anybody, do you use open source, right? And they would actually confuse open source consumption with open source software. So they're two different items, right? I'm not going to be talking about open source software, which is freeware software, or open source software which is being consumed like a complete application. I'm going to be talking about more on open source components which are being consumed within an application. So there's a very clear-cut distinction between these two aspects of open source. So when we're talking about the open source, right, we're not talking about SUSE, we're not talking about all the open source third-party applications that you see on the net, right? We are talking about your application, be it a banking application, right? So if you're getting a banking application in place, right, we're talking about those third-party components would get included. Now, if you look at 2016, 17, 18, and 19, the number of breaches which were increasing because of open source components not being used effectively was like 25%. If I look at 2019, 20, and 21, the numbers have gone up exorbitantly, right? If you look at a security risk because of an open source component, yes, we all know about a lot of, the breaches which happened in 2017 and 18 and 19, which resulted in huge losses for companies, right? People were fired, right? If you look at the number of vulnerabilities, we've got more than 17,000 vulnerabilities reported last year in open source. And the components, the number of vulnerabilities are growing, right? So we started, I remember in 2017 or 16, I was in Black Duck. We were talking about around 85,000 vulnerabilities, right? In 2019, it grew to around 90,000 plus vulnerabilities. And now you're looking at it as like more than 1.1 to 1.2 lakh vulnerabilities, right? And most of the organizations we talk to who are consuming open source without the knowledge do not have any systems of process to manage them, right? So they do believe in the trust certificate being issued by the software developer, wherein they say, okay, the developer should guarantee or warranty or say, I don't have any open source. That's not a way to manage open source, that's what we actually push across. We're talking about something called software composition analysis. This is a term which has been used by most organizations, Black Duck, et cetera. And in Scantist, we call this as SCA. Everybody calls it as SCA. So what do we mean by software composition analysis? Now, a simple layman way of explaining this is when we go for a shopping, it's like we take out a shopping list and we create a shopping list wherein we say, these are the list of items and the quantities we wish to purchase, right? And I'm sure lots of us would have been doing an online shopping during COVID time, so we still make that list out. But we also validate what gets delivered in terms, right? Meaning that whatever we've ordered, we have a bill of material, which is, I would say, is your bill of material, right? Which are the open source components in this case we're going to talk about. And we look into certain issues, which is licensing, security, and compliance. So I'm just putting this in a layman way, just to make things clear to all people that what we are trying to differentiate as compared. So when we're talking about a licensing risk out here in open source, and we're talking about a licensing risk in terms of the components which we are consuming from our shopping, what we're talking to correlate is the fact that the open source component does not mean it does not only mean it's free to use. They're all governed by licenses, right? There are more than 250 types of licenses. Some could be as stupid as get me a pizza, right? That could be a license. That's a license type which has been defined by the developer, to things like which are more commonly known as GPL or GNU Public or General Public License version 1, 2, and 3. Then you got MIT licenses, and you got different types of licenses which are commercial also. So you need to know what type of license are you consuming, right? So when we look at a component, right, when we are buying a grocery, right, we look at brands. So we are trying to relate the brand to a license, say, okay, this brand is secure, so I'm going to consume this brand, right? Next comes the security aspect. Now, the security aspect on the software composition analysis comes into the fact that I am looking to ensure that I get a secured product. So what do we do in the shopping? We look for any pilferage or any breaks or any packet cuts in whatever items we are buying in our grocery, right? So similarly out here in the security on the software side, on the licensing portion, on the security side, we look at what are the vulnerabilities which that particular component has or has been exposed or is containing, right? We need to know that. Then the third aspect out we're talking about is code decay. By code decay or code rot, we mean is how old is the component we are consuming. Now, I'm sure you would not like to use an expired product, right? So if you get a biscuit packet which says expire on 3rd of January 2020, I'm sure you would not like to consume it. Similarly, in code rot or code decay, we are looking at components which are of the latest. So we look at the latest version numbers. All this entirely gets composed or gets created into your software composition analysis, or I would say your bill of material. So this is your software supply chain. So when we are talking about consuming open source, we are also talking about asking organizations who are delivering the software to give us a detailed bill of material as to what are the third-party components which are going. So we are also a software development house. We are creating our own product right now, right? We're creating 2 products on our own, but we are an open source shop, right? We are consuming more than 80% open source components presently, right? But as a process, what we follow is we look at things first before we decide to use a component. So what do we do? We have a security team, and we have a outsourced legal team, right, who helps us to look at the legal or licensing aspects of my open source. So what do we do? Before the developers start using or consuming a product or a component inside the open source or into our application, we ask them to give us a list of all the components they're consuming with their version numbers, because the developer always needs to do that. It's a part of our DevSecOps exercise, right? So we do that possible. Every time we do that. Once we have done that aspect of figuring out what are the components, we distribute the components to the legal team and the security team. So one is the operations team, which runs through, gets a list. Let's say using ScanTest, we get a complete bill of material where we say, okay, we validate each and every component and say this component has got a license of this type, this type, this type. It has got, this is the version number, this has got so many vulnerabilities and so on. So the security team runs through that process completely, right? So we are also on Agile, and we also use Scrum technology in the development process. So what do we do? Every time a module is made, the security team runs a process. It gets the list of components being consumed. We describe the licensing types, the security types, and we also look at the code rot. That means the issue of how old the component is. And based on that, we give to 3 separate streams. One goes to the operations team, and basically which goes back to the software team to figure out if we were to change a version number of a component, how would it affect our delivery mechanism? How many delays or what delays could result, or what could result in a change in the look and feel of the product, right? That is one. 2, it goes to the security team to look at all the list of vulnerabilities, right? So they look at the list of vulnerabilities which are there in the software, and they write and say, okay, these vulnerabilities, you need to change this version number. So they give a recommendation, right? And 3rd goes back to the licensing or the legal team, which looks into the aspects and says, okay, these are components which are on GPL, these are on MIT. So we need to mitigate the issues on the GPL license, because if we are going to commercially sell a software, we need to ensure that we do not have any GPL license which can result in a legal issue with the delivery, right? So all this, once done, goes back to the operations team, which looks at the operational risk to figure out, if I were to use a component, because we can't change it, because the developers can't change it, the dashboard is going to look different. They actually look into the aspects of saying, what are the risks which we are going to mitigate before we move on to the next stage of delivering a product. So ScanTest helps out to get you a detailed bill of material, which will give you the entire list of all the components which are present in your software, right? So one, it is clientless, so you don't need to have any clients like different things which will need to monitor and scan like a tool, right? So this helps you to give you a complete bill of material to your components, right? So as step 0, what do? Is we are looking at accuracy. We're looking at open source vulnerabilities, right? This is what ScanTest works on. We're looking at what are the malicious agents which could be there in components where we need to be worried about or figure it out. And the last but not the least, how easy and how difficult is it to remediate? What are the remediations possible there? So by remediation, we mean that if we were to change a version number, it's a major aspect for development teams, because changing a version number could mean a result in a change in the dashboard look and feel. So those are the operational risks we also need to look into, right? So the ScanTest advantage is one of the major advantages we as a user have already seen, right? The accuracy rates we got from ScanTest in our own projects was as high as, I would say, very, very high as compared to, my ex company Black Duck or to other vendors, right? So we got a very high level of false positives, which were very, very low number, but very high level of accuracy. So we were able to look at components, deep dive into components, typically on the .NET and the Python environment where we are working on. We got very detailed information. 2 is the scans were automated for us, right? So since we are into DevSecOps, we were fired using different tools. So whenever we fired a build in in Jenkins, we were getting results immediately, right? It was integrated with our ticketing system, so we were getting results to ensure that we are able to mitigate. So on the DevSecOps lifecycle, it was like just fitted directly. Now the remediation portion was very, very helpful for us as a user and as a I would say, you know, person on Scantis. Any questions? Sorry, yes. So the remediations were very accurate. So we could see the CWE number, we could see what were the vulnerable components, but we also got the details with regard to what is the next available best component which has the least vulnerability, right? So we were able to fix those vulnerabilities in a record time. So I'll be very honest, we took around a day and a half before we could even release, less than a day and a half before we actually released the product to the UAT team to test out, right? So we had integrations immediately available and we were able to remediate. We're not a very large team in the development. We are around 8 to 9 people, but the quality of feedback which we got from our own internal team was that, sir, the utilization of Scantis helped us a lot. Then the Scantis advantage and visibility. We were able to get a complete dependency graph. We were able to see the dependency. One second. Just give me a second. I think the light has just switched off. I hope I don't lose power. Okay. Sorry. So the visibility, we got a complete knowledge graph. We were able to build across applications. So we had 2 applications. We were able to see the dependency. We were able to also, just to add to it, we were able to see what components were being used in both the products which were vulnerable. So we could take proactive measures so that to ensure that in future we do not use those components. So we were able to also predefine our own policies internally to ensure that certain components which we don't want to use will not be used. Then we have the list of binary material, right? I am sorry, the light has just switched off in my complex. I'm not sure.
Sir, also your PPT just went off. Can you please once again?
One second. Sorry. Is it better now?
Yes. Sir.
Am I? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir. You're visible. You're audible. Your PPT is visible.
Okay. So in terms of the knowledge base, our knowledge base is pretty long, right? We got more than 16 terabytes of data. Has it gone up again or is it still there? So we've got a very strong knowledge base. We cover most of the top 10 languages which are being consumed in the industry, right? So if you look at JavaScript, which is a very top language being consumed, .NET, Java, JavaScript. So we got a huge repo on the knowledge base. So how the solution works is basically Scantis, once it discovers a component in your bill of material, it creates a one-way hash, right? Then it sends the one-way hash to the knowledge base, which is on our database. It matches the hash. If the hash matches, then it pushes the information back, right? So we have 2 models of delivery. One is a cloud-based solution wherein it can be a cloud on Amazon. You can use an Amazon instance. Second, it could be a cloud on your own premise. And third could be a on-prem solution. So most of our customers in the Indian government or Indian defense or Indian enterprise use this as an on-prem solution rather than taking on the cloud. So they've hosted it on their own cloud. It's not a AWS cloud, but it's their own private cloud. They've hosted this on and they consume this effectively. So in their scenarios, they are pretty, in happy in terms of the knowledge base. So when we started off, our knowledge base has grown at least 3 times in the last, I think more than two times in the last couple of months, right? In terms. So what does Scantis help us to do in a nutshell is we are able to look at the third-party dependencies. We are also able to look at all the public known vulnerabilities in the applications. We're also able to do a complete software bill of material composition analysis along with licensing risk, operational risk, and security risks. We are able to fix the bugs, right? We're able to do the code decay so that developers can take a proactive approach to figure out what are the codes which they need to look into in the future to ensure that they do not get caught in that code decay trap, right? And last but not the least, it helps you to discover the licensing risk on the open source components being used. So this helps you to do a lot of activities in terms of open source management. just a brief about ourselves. We are working as a pure company into DevSecOps, right? And our motivation factor is the fact that we are only working on niche technologies. We are not looking at generic technologies. On the DevSecOps environment, we look at certain life cycles only. We look at adaptation, adaptation, verification, pre-production, and prediction and response on the DevSecOps environment. In terms of as an organization, we have good customers, large customers, like we have Nokia as one of our customers for the last 3 years. We got NPCI as one of our customers. We got Infosys. We got Ministry of IT and Defense. We got KPIT. So we got big, large names. We got a couple of large banks already consuming our solutions. And so we've been there for now more than 3 years in terms of as an organization, but only focused on cybersecurity. That's it from my side. And any questions, I'm more than happy to answer post the session.
Thanks, Mohit. So I learned a lot from you also on security, and I think security is becoming a major thing now, and obviously we require more people like Mohit in the industry to make software safe. So now I will hand over the mic to Colonel Inderjeet Singh. So Colonel Inderjeet Singh is the Chief Cybersecurity Officer at BHARAT Technologies Private Limited. He is an information technology professional, a solution architect, program project manager with 26 years of experience across wide spectrum of areas spanning telecom, IT infrastructure management, information security architecture, data centers, cloud computing, smart cities, IoT, geospatial data, and e-governance. He will be speaking on open source blockchain platforms. I think this will be an interesting talk. Blockchain is the talk of the town these days. Consistently delivering mission critical results in the field of information technology. He has done a lot of work in information security management, telecommunication networks, data centers, cloud computing. Influential leadership skills through efficient management of large and dispersed team while promoting cooperating work atmosphere. So he has also served in United Nations mission in Democratic Republic of Congo. He is a subject matter expert on latest cutting-edge technological domains and effective managed mission critical projects. He is a council member of CETI and fellow of IETE, IE member CSI, member PMI, and a host of other organizations. So over to Colonel Inderjeet Singh. Nice to introduce you again. Last year also I had the opportunity to introduce you when we had a physical event. So over to you.
Yeah, a pleasure, Saurav. It's really wonderful, and meeting e-meetings are really great. And thank you, Shashi, for organizing such a very innovative, thoughtful, open source platform summit, which is the need of the hour to talk. And especially, like all my earlier panelists and other speakers have been talking of the open source and how it's really working. It's really very important to talk on a topic which is of concern in times to come. And of course, we are talking about everything to be open source, and blockchain, of course, cannot be left alone as a whole. So I'll just share my screen. Can you see the complete screen, or it's not coming? This one.
So your screen was shared.
Share has ended. Actually, it was earlier visible.
No, it's okay.
No, yes, now you have shared. Just make it in the presentation mode.
I've done that.
We cannot see in the presentation mode. We are
Maybe
seeing.
you have selected the wrong file.
To do that, I will do what I will do. I'll share my entire screen, so then I think it will come. Now just see it's in a complete screen.
Yes, now it's okay.
So blockchain as a concept is an open source platform. It's a huge platform which has been getting created, and we are seeing so much of traction which is happening last couple of years. I started, way back 2015 when we started really talking of the blockchain, and it was de-linked from the Bitcoin, which is the most commonly spoken, and the cryptocurrency is always in the talk. But blockchain has been a thing which is going to change the way we're going to do business, the way we are going to work, the way our internet works, the client server architecture. So everything which we see today is going to be changing because of blockchain and how the blockchain is built. So I will be discussing on the open source platform, and I'll be touching more the India perspective also, and I'll give an overview of the Hyperledger. We can do a deep dive, but definitely, I'll keep the interest of everyone alive. So, what's happening is today we are talking of all the disruptive technologies. In the sense, we are talking of AI, we are talking of ML, we are talking of, IoT devices, 72 billion devices by 2025. And so much of data, which is going to be there, right? And everybody talks of data. But how do you authenticate that data, whether the data is right? How do you, ensure that the data, what you're getting is in the format which you require, okay? And even the AR, VR, there's so much more of visual data which is there. And today we are all, in most of it in a legacy kind of systems where we had the SAP systems, integrated ERP systems there. So there's always a, speck of doubt that everybody talks of a blockchain, but what is a blockchain all about, right? So if I tell that we can really authenticate all your transactions, we can ensure that those transactions are, immutable. They are in a distributed environment, right? They are a kind of there's a data trust between, different transactions. And I will not touching on this particular topic of DeFi, which is going to be changing the complete financial environment all across the world. Okay, so that's it's a distributed finance, and that's going to revolutionize the transactions or the banking in another 5 to 10 years time. And blockchain is practically, changing the way we are going to do the business, right? So that is where we are seeing the blockchain making a big dent in all our day-to-day work. And it is ensuring the data and the trust. And three major aspects, it is available geo-distributed, anywhere across the globe you can have it. You have the smart contracts which ensure that any transaction which is there is authenticated. You have the logics and rules. You have the encryption. So it's all a hash codes which is driving the blockchain. So and if you look at it, the Bitcoin or the blockchain is the underlying technology of the Bitcoin. So that's the strength of the blockchain today. So they are all kind of append-only digital ledgers. They are all distributed, different nodes, and anywhere you change anything, you cannot change till the time there is a consensus between different nodes which is there, right? And while we talk of the cybersecurity, it's very strong. So it's only that anybody is able to hack 51% of the nodes. That's the only time he can take control of the blockchain. Otherwise, it's not. And they're all immutable and secured, right? And what's the best part of it is that there are so many number of use cases which are there. I'll be just touching on the use case, and every area, every field, every domain, every vertical. We are trying to implement the blockchain and get the best out of it. But what actually is the blockchain? It's not been developed by any one person. So it's a community development. It's an open source development. And there are so many flavors of the blockchain which are there today. Initially when we came up, it was the Ethereum which was there. Then we saw Ripple coming up. We saw Agor coming up. We saw the chain coming up, Chainlink coming up, right? Multi-chain is there. Hyperledger is there. And there's so many flavors of blockchain which are there. And every blockchain has got its advantages and disadvantages. And the way the architecture is built, basically, the aim is that your organization should be able to imbibe this particular technology and ensure that you are going to use the technology for the best possible way, right? So there, then there are kind of different kind of blockchains, what we talk of. There are public blockchain, there are private blockchain. Public blockchain is a normal blockchain, what we talk. The nodes are all across the world, right? It's just like equivalent to the internet of 1990s, okay? And the public blockchain is the Ethereum or the Bitcoin, the Litecoins. They're all distributed ledgers anywhere across the world. But when you're going to implement in any organization, you will say, I can't put my data across anywhere in the world beyond my enterprise boundary. So there comes the private blockchain, and it is internal to the company, right? And it's the one which is the kind of a platform which gives you all the facilities of the blockchain. However, you're going to be just working within the organization. You are able to bring in different softwares which you had, like I told you about ERP or a SAP or HR system or a CRM system. You can all bring it on a blockchain. So practically there's a misnomer that if you're going to implement a blockchain, you're going to change the complete application. The answer is a big no. You're not going to change the application. You're going to make them work, interpret. And how you're going to interpret, I'm going to be telling you in a couple of slides where I'll talk of BaaS. There's a blockchain as a service. So that's the way you really can work with the existing solutions, the blockchain capability. And the enterprise blockchains which are there are kind of Ripple chain, Hyperledger. Hyperledger I'm again and again emphasizing because that's one of the most important and the largest when it comes to the community development blockchain which has come up. So we are seeing, though it's the community development, but then the IBM, Oracle, everybody has jumped the fray, and they're all getting into the blockchain development for the blockchain as a service. So like I was telling you that all these blockchains which are there, they're open source blockchains, and it's a consortium of different people, different organizations, different non-profit organizations which have come up, and each of them have got its own advantages and disadvantages, right? So I have put them on a view file. So, say for example, the Ethereum which is there, so it's being developed by the Ethereum developers itself, right? It's a permissioned blockchain. That means it's all nodes till the time they say that it's okay, then only it will work, otherwise it doesn't really work. And the consensus algorithms are kind of proof of work, what they have it. Then you have the Hyperledger fabric. So it's again a cross industry, and it's been developed by the Linux Foundation, the permission, and there's no currency which is attached to it. Where we saw, in the case of Ethereum, there's an Ether and it's been traded in the market today. So it's around its price which is there, it goes up and down, right? Then you have the R3 Coda, which is only for the financial services, but when we talk about the R3 Coda, so we are now trying to work on a DeFi, which I just told you. So there's no cryptocurrency associated with it. Ripple, again, for the financial services, it's a permission, and the Ripple XRP is the crypto which is then traded in the market. And then you have the Quorum. It's based on the Ethereum by the Ethereum developers and JP Morgan Chase. So you find a lot of banking communities getting into the development today, right? So various number of platforms, they're all open source platforms developed by different organizations, different communities, and there are lots of material which is available in Git where you can add value to that particular development and use it. So it's a kind of platform which is giving ease of working by different people if they want to really get into development. And like I was telling you, this open source platform, the blockchain, it gets into every sector, every segment, every vertical. Whether it's in a manufacturing, where you talk about the asset tracking, you're talking about the real-time auction for supply contracts, supply chain transparency, major issue, it's really working, and there are lots of use cases which have come up. People are really working on the supply chain transparency. Then we talk in the retail for the loyalty tracking, product provenance, logistics management, your peer-to-peer selling. Insurance is another sector, and we are seeing a lot of traction in the real-time insurance, automated underwriting, fraud detections, claim management, your banking and capital markets, right? It's about the audit compliance, your trade finance. That's pretty important application, the trade finance, the loan syndication, global payments, KYC, AML, and the government, of course. And while we talk about the government, I'm going to be talking about the Indian blockchain, framework, which has just been released. So we'll talk about that as well. And health is again a major area which is of real interest. So it all gives you a cross-organizational workflows. It gives you a high assurance audits. It gives you asset transfer proven. So any segment which you pick up, it's giving a lot of advantage. And that's why I told you that blockchain is going to revolutionize the way we work. Even the internet, what we see today in a client-server architecture, is going to be, not going to be on HTTPS anymore I think by 2030 is the time which I anticipate. It's going to be on the IPFS protocols, and it's going to be a distributed architecture. So it's going to revolutionize everything. But while we talk of the blockchain, open source blockchain, right? The Gartner scales have been, saying good. Last year, 2019, 2020, we didn't see the blockchain at all. So it was really a surprise which came up. And the reason was that we are going through a phase of the blockchain right now, where we saw the phase one was irrational exuberance, very high profile successes came in. Everybody spoke of blockchain, but they were really not able to implement, right? Then we came to the phase two, which is large focus investment, many successful models. So this is a time we are going to see 2022. So now when we see, if we can see the slide at 2018 to 2021, we were seeing quite a lot of disillusionment which came in. Everybody spoke of blockchain, but nobody knew how the blockchain is really going to come in. And that's what the trough of the blockchain which we saw, right? And now we are seeing that momentum going up again. A lot of development work happening in the blockchain space altogether. Lots of governments going in a blockchain implementation. So 2022 to 2026, we're going to have really large projects coming up, right? And the third phase is where we're going to see the major implementation of the blockchain happening. That's around 27 to 30. And it's going to be, all the value-added global projects are going to come up. And that's where we're going to see lots of it, right? And it's anticipated that, in terms of the business, it's going to be almost 3.1 trillion by 2030, right? That's the kind of potential the blockchain has got it. And if you're into the development of the blockchain today, that's the right place you're going to be, right? And the last line, if you read, it's the businesses value added by blockchain will grow by over 360 billion. That's a really huge number in times to come. So coming on to the Hyperledger, and one of the major, like I brought in different blockchain platforms which are there. The one which I just want to give you a showcase you that what a Hyperledger is about. It's being hosted by the Linux Foundation, right? And it's the fastest growing project in the Linux Foundation. And it's a collaborative effort by the cross-industry blockchain technologies, right? So that's what we are seeing. And whether it's your finance, IoT, your supply chain, healthcare, your manufacturing technology, everywhere we are finding that global collaboration, which is being part of this blockchain. And what are the goals of this Hyperledger blockchain? When we talk of it, it's to create an enterprise-grade open source framework and code bases. It provides a neutral, open, and community-driven infrastructure, right? Building the technical communities. You educate the public, promote communities of communities. So it really promotes the open source people, or the community to join in, right? To develop the blockchain and shared ledgers and conduct the POCs, conduct the use cases, conduct field trials and development. And really they promote getting into the blockchain framework and technology. So when we talk of the Linux Foundation, so you have a modular approach, umbrella approach, where you have the Hyperledger, which is at the highest, and then you have the different frameworks which are working for different things, right? So there's a Hyperledger Indy for different aspect handling that in a blockchain. There's a Hyperledger Fabric, there's a Hyperledger Iroha, there is a Hyperledger Sawtooth, there is a Burrow. So, there are different Hyperledger fabrics which have been created, the frameworks which have been created for addressing different things. So, say for example, if you want to do the KYC, a different fabric really works, or the framework work. If you're into the financial part of it, there's a different framework works. You're into the supply chain part of it, you're a different framework works. And then you have tools which are under the framework. So there are tools called Hyperledger Quilt, Composer, Explorer, and the Cell. Right. So there are so many tools which really assist for the community to develop and create a use case around these particular technologies and framework. So these are the ones which I brought it out. And what is really interesting, right? Like I was telling you, implementing a blockchain in your organization. And this is one of the Government of India offering, which they are trying to push, work it out, blockchain as a service. And blockchain as a service is nothing. It's a kind of a platform where you can bring in all your silos of the softwares what you have and make them interoperate, right? And you can really bring in the frameworks which I just mentioned, right? The Hyperledger Fabric, Grid, Iroha, Sawtooth. You can bring in all the frameworks for different application. Get in the tools of Hyperledger. That's the one which you bring in to develop. And you can create all the value-added services, and you can have the APIs, right, to develop the tools, and you can use it in the government organizations. And those APIs will be available in times to come, and you will have the management consoles, you have the governance tools, you have the onboarding console. So there's a blockchain as a service is going to be a major game changer in times to come, and you can have both cloud and on-prem deployment as well, right? So in January, we saw the framework which has come up is a draft framework which is there for the blockchain. So this is still in the finalization mode, but definitely it gives you an insight. This by the Government of India, so it really gives into insight that how much they are promoting the blockchain Hyperledger, and they're really creating a complete national blockchain distributed infrastructure, right? And different platform layers they want to really create based on your contract, smart contract layers, domain-specific smart contract layers, design pattern for smart contracts. Also, there's a layer on the asset layer for asset creation, asset user linking, owner transfers, and the asset tracking. And when we look in from the critical national applications, we can work on the finance, get into the governance part of it, healthcare part of it, all the smart cities, your insurance, right? Your Aadhaar, your e-Praman, and they will all get integrated to these kind of, blockchain applications which I just brought in, e-sign, your digital locker, right? And you will also have a complete security layer, right? For the integrity, privacy, authentication, authorization, role-based access. So this is what is actually going to come in times, another 2 to 3 years. We are trying to see a lot of traction on a blockchain as a service by the Government of India, and lots of applications will develop. And this is all open source. So just see how the community development will really, help building the blockchain for the India. And really, it's a very fantastic model and the framework for everyone to work on and work on different applications. So with this, I will end my talk here. So if you have any questions, you can just put in the chat box, and I'll like to answer.
So thanks, Colonel Indrajit Singh. A very useful presentation. I was also surprised to see that Government of India is at the forefront, and they are having the national blockchain framework. I am happy that government is moving ahead at very fast pace. I did not expect that personally. So very good presentation. So over to Mithali Sharma. So just to introduce Mithali Sharma is Head of Risk Compliance and Information Security at SDG Software India Private Limited. She will be presenting on mitigating cybersecurity risks associated with open source software. Mithali Sharma is a qualified and competent risk compliance and information security officer with expertise in risk management and governance of information security. Mithali is certified in risk and information systems control from ISACA, CMMI, SVC, and host of other organizations. She has led teams for conducting internal risk assessments, providing strategic consulting in improving measuring compliance programs under ISO IEC 27001 colon 2013. And so she has deep expertise in security. She is currently leading the entire risk compliance and information security program within her organization. So over to Mithali. Just to announce, actually, I have a very hard stop at 1:25. So I may not be able to close the event. So if you can stick to time, I will try to be in the event and close the session, because actually I have another event from 1:25.
Sure, I'll try my best to stick to it.
Okay.
Okay, so is my screen visible?
Yes, we can see you. You can share the presentation. I am not able to see the presentation.
The presentation is already there, sir. If you will see on the bottom, there will be a whiteboard button. Ma'am, you can continue.
You can start now.
Okay. So, hi everyone. I know Saurav has already given me a deadline of 10 minutes, so I'll try my best to stick to those timelines, because I definitely want him to close the session as he began the session. And a lot has already been spoken about open source, and probably this session would be more like a summarizing session, or a session where we are going to summarize everything that we have been hearing since morning. I would like to thank Shashi ji and his team for organizing such an innovative sessions. Always bringing us together in some form or the other, and always making it a presentable one, a knowledgeable one, something which you go back, when you take it back, you are happy that, you spent the day well. Definitely we are going to miss the physical presence and the lavish treatment and the lunch and all, but this is a very good start. So today I'm going to talk more about mitigating the cyber risks related to open source software. The agenda that I'm going to speak about would be some of the statistics. We'll discuss about some of the advantages of open source. We'll talk about some of the open source risks and some of the best practices in the industry. So here are some of the statistics. If you look at it, as many as 93% of organizations use open source software, and 78% feel that most of their operations are running on open source. In yet another survey, it is said that commercial databases are at least containing 75% of the components or the code bases are open source. Another survey says that 97% of developers responded saying that they are using open source components in their applications, and over 87% stated that they are using it heavily. So I would say open source is equivalent to Google. You cannot live without Google. You cannot live without open source in your applications. Some more statistics to follow. The overall market of open source is projected to stand at $21.6 billion in 2020, and then grow by over 30% by 2020, reaching close to $33 billion in a year. So that's the kind of landscape that we are talking about when it comes to open source. Why people use open source? There are a lot of advantages associated with it. I think Prasanna, Mohit, most of them spoke about it. So primary advantages being it is generally free, and if something is free, you tend to get hold of it and you really want to use it. So it's generally free. It is constantly evolving, whether it is using for your internal applications, whether it is using for e-commerce, wherever you want to use it. Open source is the in thing, and it is continuously improving. It is continuously evolving. There are a lot of fast fixes that are there. A lot of components are integrated. There are a lot of integrations available. Community support is there. It is scalable. You can use it easily without much training. There are so many people available there who can probably help you fix it, help you support it. So it's agility in DevOps, in various other fields. That's the advantage of using open source. Now, we spoke a lot about the advantages of open source, but what about the risks associated with it? So there are a number of risks that are associated with open source. The first one being the software vulnerabilities and fixes associated with it. These, like I mentioned in my previous slide, that it is an advantage that there are quick fixes. But then these quick fixes are publicly available. It's a part of the National Vulnerability Database. They are available in the various communities. You go through it. You can look at the vulnerability fixes. Now, when you can look at it, then definitely you are giving the key to the hackers as well. So they can also go and see that, okay, this is the vulnerability that's existing and probably this is what I can exploit. So two very good examples would be Equifax and Heartbleed. In Equifax, the open source vulnerability of Apache Struts framework was exposed. And if we look at Heartbleed, the SSH vulnerability, again, the open source vulnerability that was exposed. So since it is publicly available, it has a very high risk and a high probability that it can be exploited by the hackers. Coming to the next risk, the security consideration in open source software. So the open source software does not come with any claim saying that this is the most secure software, or this is the security testing that I did, or this is the legal obligation that you need to follow. Just like a proprietary software, you will have lots of terms and conditions, terms of use. There'll be support. There'll be technical support. I mean, support will be there here also, but there will be no guaranteed warranties or something that is coming with the software. It will not talk about best practices. It will not include any, and it is going to include a lot of third parties libraries. It will be a mix of a lot of software. So in a way, whether the security has been considered or not may or may not be explicitly defined. It completely depends on the developers of that open source, how they perceive security and what practices they have followed while developing that open source. The next one, like I mentioned, warranties and the IP infringement issues. So a lot of times, if it comes to a proprietary software, you know that you have bought that software. It is legally secure. You know a lot of things about that the licenses that you're using, they are secured licenses. But in this case, you don't know if it's a copyrighted software that you're using, or there is really some legal implication around it. So if there is any infringement, or if there is any issue that comes up, the legal issue comes up, then probably you would be responsible for that infringement and not the developer of that software. The fourth risk is the untracked use of software. A lot of developers, like we say, you go to Google, you find a code, you can paste it anywhere in your application. Similarly, open source, since it is not licensed, developers may use it in their applications. If it is not tracked properly within your organization, then there is a high risk that you're using a software in customer delivery, which is open source, which has inbuilt vulnerabilities into it, and you are actually delivering the code to customer with the vulnerabilities, which can later on be exploited. I mean, it will be just like a gamble. You are giving it to the customer. If it gets exploited, the customer will be hacked. It may not get exploited for years, and then you would be secure for that time. So these are some of the risks that we are talking about. One other risk is the operational challenge. Operational challenge, like one of the panelists spoke about, rotten code or the decayed code. So that definitely the risk is there. There may be some high risk vulnerabilities which were there in the software. You don't know if they were addressed or not in the version that you are using. Maybe the version that you are using started, let's say, in the year 2018. But whether it went to a logical closure, whether it had its upgrade, whether it went through its security cycle or not, you don't know about it. So it could be a dead code that you are still using. It could be a rotten code that you are using. It could be a vulnerable code that you are using, because you don't know the baseline of it. You don't have the correct versioning of it. So that's a risk, a high risk, that you would be using an obsolete code. I spoke a lot about the risks. We have been talking about using of open source. Some of you must be thinking whether I should actually go ahead and use open source, or should I ban it in my organization? Well, the answer is you cannot live without using open source, but definitely, like for any security program, you go back with a certain set of rules, certain set of controls, whether you are implementing ISO standard, whether you are implementing CMMI, PCI, any standard, you have your own set of controls defined around it. Similarly, for open source also, you should have best practices aligned within your organization, depending on the threat landscape and the appetite of your organization. Now, I'm going to speak about some of the best practices that you can probably take back from here. Whatever is relevant to your organization, please go ahead and implement it. The first best practice that I'm going to speak about is assess the need. So first and foremost, you should assess whether or not an open source is required or not. Whether that is the need of your organization at the moment, in 6 months, in 3 months, just as you would do a IT roadmap, you should do that for the open source as well. This would include conducting the risk assessment, going through the selection criteria. You look at the total cost of ownership for that particular software, look at the technical support that is available, look at the ratings and how people are perceiving it, what is the security component around it. So go through those to, first of all, assess whether that open source software is even required or not. Some of the trailing questions that you can use while thinking whether I should go for an open source or not is, does it do what you want to do? Is it really required? Does that software come with some inbuilt risks, inbuilt vulnerabilities? Is my organization good enough and ready enough to take those risks and to accept those risks and then take the software? So these are some of the things you should definitely think about before going ahead and making the choice of an open source software. Now, once you have thought that yes,
Mithali, I would need to leave, I think. So
okay, no problem.
It was great having Mithali. So Shashi would be moderating on my behalf. Actually, I have a very relatively busy day today.
Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you. Go ahead, Mithali.
Yes.
Sure. So I'll move ahead with the next one. So you have identified that you really need open source in your organization. You can't live without that open source. So what do? We have done the risk assessment, we have gone through it and decided that yes, I'm going to use this open source. The next would be the governance part of it. Just as you would have a governing policy for information security, for asset management, for human resource security, for network security, why don't you have a governing policy around open source? Why do you want to miss that? Why don't we consider that as part of our asset management or as part of our governance process? So whether it is your risk management process where you are looking at the scalability of the solution, the acceptability of the solution, look at how you're going to govern that particular open source. What would be the trailing policies around it? What all policies does it fit in? The third important best practice that you can follow would be, people often ask me, where do we start? So if you already have open source within your organization and you don't have you don't have the governance right now, you want to put your house in order. And to do that, the first and the foremost thing would be take stock of what is already there within the organization. Go ahead and look at the inventory. Prepare an inventory just as you would do for your hardware and software assets, the proprietary ones. Do that for the open source as well. Do you have all of that documentation at a centralized location, which is there for any open source? Do you have a repository of the source code that was being used, the versioning that was used, the documentation, what all libraries are being used, what is the framework, what is my data map at all places? So all of those information is something that you should have, and then build a process around it and start governing it. So those would be the simple steps to start. Similarly, installation of open source. It should not be the case that, like in our organization, we don't give admin access to any user. So if any user has to install anything, that person has to go through the IT and then get it installed. So that way, what happens is, if it's a proprietary software licensed one, IT will install it. If it's an open source software, we go through a legal assessment of it. So it's a legal and vulnerability assessment that we do for each software which is free and open source software. So first, we will do the vulnerability assessment of it. We'll do the legal assessment of it, because you want to have somebody look into the legal aspect of it and see what is the copyright infringement there, what is the terms of use of that particular open source. And only then we go ahead and get that installed on the systems by reliable people, that is our IT people, and they would keep on tracking it in the similar way that they would do for any other software. The next best practice, very important, software security testing. Whenever you are developing any code for any customer or for any other application, you should make security a key component of your software security life cycle. Similarly, for any open source use also, go for SAS scans, that is the static scanning, go for the dynamic scanning of vulnerabilities. Look at what is the current vulnerabilities available. Can my app and inform my customer that I'm using an open source component, how it is being done. So similarly at SDG, we have a secure software development process where each of these components is built into the application itself. So if we are using any open source, we would go back and tell the customer, this is the open source we are using. These are the vulnerabilities that we found. This is how we are mitigating it. This is the risk which we are going to have in the application. And with that, we actually go ahead and do the release of that application. Next important thing, application hardening and patch management. Just as you would patch the system for any critical Microsoft updates, for Adobe updates, similarly for any open source that you're using within your applications, you should patch those as well on time. Look at those patching things, look on the sites for the patches that are available and deploy them in the similar fashion as you would do for a regular patch, which is test the patch on the test environment and then deploy it in the production environment. So similarly, you should follow that same change management process in case of open source as well. So, and one important component that we sometimes tend to forget is the training of employees. All said and done, you have best policies in the world, you have best tools in the world, but if your employees are not made the custodian of that information security, if your employees do not resonate well and understand what they are supposed to do, then the entire initiative fails over there. So when it comes to open source, your development team, that is your developers, should understand what is the component of cybersecurity involved in open source, what all they need to take care of, what all best practices they should follow when it comes to open source code, how they should report the vulnerabilities. This is something that developers should be trained on, and the security team should also be trained on the fact that they should be involved at the start of the process when you are doing the designing of the solution. So starting from secure design, secure code, secure test, everything should be there, and employees should be made aware of it. So it should come in the culture of the organization rather than just being imposed through policies. So a food for thought, some basic principles that you can follow for open source. This is a four-step approach. Prioritize the critical applications that you want to start with. Then baseline the vulnerabilities that you see right now in those applications if they are using open source. Keep monitoring them. Look at the new vulnerabilities that are being reported in the newer versions. Triage is like you keep a note of it, you keep tracking them, you look at the risks that are being deployed and keep a note of it. So it's more like monitoring the entire stuff and looking at it at a very holistic level rather than just having some policy and just having that installed in the systems. At the end, I would leave you with this note that open source has its own pros and cons, but with emerging threat landscape and agile environment, it is the need of the hour. Although whether to choose open source or maybe a proprietary software, that would entirely be the choice of the organization, depending on their landscape and looking at whether those open source or the software that is being used is secure, scalable, stable. So that would be something which the organization would look at. But it is an excellent model to use open source, because there is a lot of things, a lot of good projects, a lot of good stuff that we are looking at over there. Who could have imagined making, an e-commerce site in just 15-20 minutes, setting that up? We used to write so many PHP code earlier. Now you can go ahead and have OpenCart, Magento, WordPress, you name it, and you can have it. So anybody can set that up, or developing applications using open source. It's very easy. However, what we need to acknowledge is that there would be security risks that will come with open source software. How we mitigate them, how we govern them, and make our project secure is what is the need of the hour. So with that, I end my presentation, and I thank you all for your patience and for listening to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mithali Sharma, for sharing. But end of the day, all the speakers since morning till now, I realized that open source is part of our life, and at the same time we also have challenges. But open source is a good software which we should be adopting in our day-to-day life. I would like to thank each one of you, all the panelists who've been part of it, and the chairman of the session, and all the delegates and all the supporting organization. Thank you very much. We come to the end of this 4th edition of Open Source Summit 2021. We look forward to meet you in the next event. Be safe, take care, all the best.
The mission of SUSE is to give customers the freedom to innovate everywhere. We are a global leader in true open source solutions, and our community-led power of many approach to innovation ensures that we give you the freedom and flexibility needed to meet your digital transformation goals. We help our customers around the world simplify, modernize, and accelerate their business with solutions for hybrid cloud IT, cloud-native transformation, and IT operations at the edge. Are you ready for SUSE to help? No matter how complex your infrastructure or how quickly you are transitioning to the cloud, SUSE has the solutions to power your hybrid cloud IT strategy. SUSE offers one platform for managing all your business-critical applications, like SAP, without downtime, whether running on-premises or in the cloud. SUSE solutions for high-performance computing take the complexity out of running demanding applications like AI, ML, and analytics, so you can focus on gaining new business insights. SUSE management solutions enable you to seamlessly and securely migrate your enterprise workloads across operating systems and hybrid cloud infrastructure. SUSE is here to enable your cloud-native transformation by harnessing the power of containers and Kubernetes to innovate faster and keep up with the changing demands of your business. Our SUSE Rancher Enterprise Kubernetes Management Platform is the only solution that offers simple, consistent, and secure operation of any certified Kubernetes distribution from the data center to the cloud to the edge and beyond. By harnessing the power of containers, you can create new customer experiences by accelerating the deployment of new cloud-native applications. Modernize your legacy monolithic applications and infrastructure with agile cloud services and migrate existing applications into containers to more effectively leverage your cloud-native infrastructure. As edge computing continues to emerge as a key pillar of your customer-centric digital transformation strategy, SUSE makes IT operations at the edge possible. SUSE provides mission-critical edge computing solutions that are simple to use and reliable, with the highest level of security, safety, and compliance. With SUSE, you are able to build, deploy, and manage cloud-native applications at massive scale using our adaptable Linux OS and Kubernetes solutions that are purpose-built for the edge. SUSE Edge solutions are helping expand the boundaries of innovation into areas including medical devices, 5G equipment, automobiles, aircraft, factories, cruise ships, retail stores, and even satellites. At SUSE, we want you to be innovation heroes for your customers. Your journey of innovation starts with SUSE, and we at SUSE have one goal: your success.